Hi, in this short video I'm going to go over a conceptual model for the digital clock problem. I'm going to use fruits and vegetables to help out here. So I grow tomatoes, and so I've got lots of tomatoes, and I have some pears I bought the other day. So let's get started. Large red tomatoes are going to represent number display objects. Pears, clock displays, and the yellow tomatoes, digit objects. All right? So you've been working with these, so you have a sense of what the code is in each of these classes. So let's get started. We're going to make a new clock display object. Boom, there it is, right? And the first thing the clock display object does in its constructor is it makes an hours object. And when it makes the hours object, it passes in the code in the book that you started with, passed in a rollover value, 12 for a 12-hour clock. We need to add two numbers that represent where the hours digit is going to tell the digit objects that it creates to put themselves on the graphics display, 100 and 200. So it's going to have three parameters, right? So hours in its constructor in turn creates a digit object which we'll call TP for tens place, and it tells TP to any digits that it displays to display them at 100. It also creates a ones place object which we'll call OP for ones place, and it's created at the 200 position. Okay, and they both start out with 0. And that all happens right when the clock display object makes the hours, right? And that makes the digits. So then it comes back to clock display and it makes a minutes object, right? And it passes into minutes 60, its rollover value, and we're going to have it pass in 300 and 400 for where to place its tens place and its ones place digits. So minutes in turn creates its TP digit. It has the exact same name as this TP, but because minutes is talking to it, it doesn't get confused, right? So hours has its own TP and minutes has its own TP. And it creates a ones place, OP, for its tens place digit and its ones place digit. Okay, so we're all set up now. Then we come back to clock display, and clock display starts this method called time tick. In time tick, each of minutes and hours has a field called value, which is the number of hours and the number of minutes. So time tick tells minutes, increment your value by 1. Right? And now what you have to do is add some code here that will break apart the tens place digit and the ones place digit, and you do that using div and mod. So you'll store those in two different variables, like your tens place TPD and OPD, right? And then basically with a bunch of if statements, you'll say, if the tens place digit is 0, tell TP to call its 0 method, right? If it's 1, it's 1 method, and so on. And then with the ones place digit, tell OP to, in this case, call its 1 method, right? Which would draw a 1 in that location, all right? So that finishes. We come back to time tick, and we do time tick again. And time tick now makes that a 2, right? And the tens place hasn't changed, but the ones place has. The ones place is now 2, right? So this goes on and on. It's a clock, right? Time is flying. And eventually we get to 59, right? And then time tick calls minutes again and says increment value. Now value hits its rollover value of 60, so it gets set back to 0, right? So now the tens place is 0, and the ones place is 0 for the minutes. Back here, if you look in time tick, there's an if statement that says that it checks after it's called minutes and told minutes to increment its value. The if statement says if there's a 0 here in minutes value field, then an hour has gone by, 60 minutes. So we have to tell hours to increment its value field. So is incremented to 1, right? And the same thing happens, right? We have the div and mod to find out the tens place value, the ones place value. Exact same code as in minutes, right? It has to be because they're both based upon the same code. And it tells TP to put a 0 there, and it tells OP to put a 1 there, right? We're back to here. We go through the whole thing again. We get to 59, rolls over, tells hours to increment its value to 2, and that goes to 2, right? And this happens until we get up to 12, and then this goes back to 0, all right? So that is what's happening here at a conceptual level. Now we'll take some closer look at the code. Two things in particular: time tick and how to add a while loop to that so that it will keep going, right? And the div and mod and the if statements that we need to use to pull out the tens place digit and the ones place digit out of value. That's it. So here's a method that one of the students in the class created to handle the splitting out the tens place and the ones place digit, and then a bunch of if statements. So just this is how it looks, right? It's simply a declaring of a local variable of type int that holds value div 10, right? So this is integer division, so we only get the whole number. So if value is 0, like we started out with, 10 goes into 0 0 times, so that's 0. And same thing here. 0 left over. And so then if tens is 0, then we they use D1 for the name of what I did for TP, right? Just digit 1, 0 method would be called, and so on with the if statements here. And then they're down to the ones, right? If ones equals 0, D2, 0. Okay? So that's all you need to do here, right? It's these two these two functions here expressions here to calculate the tens place digit and the ones place digit, right? Now, time tick, which we also talked about. So all you have to do at time tick is do this, right? While true, which just basically creates an infinite loop that keeps going, because while loops will, as long as whatever's inside the expression evaluates to true, while loops will keep going. So everything inside the loop, which is between these two braces, will just happen over and over again. And you'll see what happens here is it calls minutes increment value, which adds 1 to minutes value field, right? It does all that stuff we just talked about with the tomatoes. And here's that line that says if minutes.getValue equals 0, that means we got up to 60 and hit the rollover value. So now we tell hours to increment, right? And that's it. That's all there is to this. Okay, so if you have questions, let me know. Thanks.